It's funny how the smallest thing can shatter everything you thought you knew. I was just scrolling through my phone, trying to kill time before bed when I saw her message. Not just one, a string of them. The name Alex kept popping up, over and over. At first, I thought it was some old friend or a work contact. But then I noticed the way her thumb hovered over the screen when she thought I wasn't looking. Her eyes darted to the door, and her breath hitched just a little too quickly. That's when I felt the first punch in my gut. I looked closer. The texts weren't innocuous. They had that tone, that familiarity that told me I was seeing something I'd regret. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one message read. "I've been thinking about you all day," another one said. I felt a cold sweat break out and my stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd be sick. I didn't want to believe it, not her, not my wife. We've been married for 5 years. She was my best friend, the one I trusted with everything. We had this little life I thought was perfect. But her actions had been changing lately, little things I brushed off. She'd be secretive about her phone. Sometimes her voice would crack when she answered calls. I'd catch her hiding her screen when I approached, her eyes flicking away like a kid caught with a cookie. Tonight I saw her look at that phone again. Her face was flushed, her hands trembling just a little. She kept messaging Alex, and that look in her eyes, the way she glanced at that screen like it was a lifeline, it all made the blood in my veins turn ice cold. I felt like I was walking through a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I had to see more. I waited until she was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. Then I quietly stepped closer, peering over her shoulder. Her fingers were still on her phone. I saw her delete a message. Her heart was pounding, hers or mine, I wasn't sure. My palms slicked with sweat and I clenched my fists to stop them from trembling. "Who are you texting?" I finally said, voice hoarse, strained. She froze like a deer caught in headlights. Her eyes flicked to mine and I saw that guilty spark ignite. Her lips parted but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at her phone, that guilty, defensive look that made my stomach churn. She tried to brush past me but I grabbed her arm. "Who is Alex?" I demanded again, voice sharper than I wanted. Her face was pale now, her lips trembling. "It's nothing," she whispered, but the way she avoided my gaze made me want to scream. I knew I had to see more. The evidence was right there in her phone, in her face. This wasn't just a flirtation, it was something much worse. I felt my heart pounding so loudly I thought she could hear it, and I knew my world was about to change forever. That's when I decided I'd find out exactly what she was hiding. I couldn't let this go, not tonight, not ever. And I knew deep down that once I knew I'd have to act. The question was how. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. The entire house felt weightless, like I was walking through someone else's nightmare. Every noise from her side of the bedroom made my stomach tighten, a knot I couldn't untie. I kept replaying what I saw in her phone, the way her fingers trembled, how her eyes darted away when I asked who Alex was. I was furious not just at her but at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I stayed up until dawn planning. I knew I couldn't confront her outright, not yet. I had to be strategic. So I started with the evidence, digging around her digital life. Her social media, her messages, even her email. Anything I could find. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. It was something deeper, more reckless. I found emails from weeks ago, some exchanged at odd hours. Photos, too, not explicit but enough to make my stomach turn. A picture of her in the mirror, but her eyes looked straight into the camera, that sly, secretive look that wasn't her. Then there were the texts, late-night conversations where she was blatantly flirting, asking Alex if he missed her, telling him she was thinking about him all day. I could feel my fists clenching. This wasn't just a one-night mistake, it was a pattern, a betrayal that had been building for some time. I had to act, but carefully. I decided to gather all this evidence and prepare my move. I wanted to catch her in the act again, to have everything laid out undeniable. I bought a voice recorder just in case. I wanted her to slip up again, to say something she couldn't deny. I also started setting my own little trap. I left my phone near her, intentionally unlocked. I knew she'd try to check it, maybe try to find some proof she was innocent. But I wasn't planning on giving her that chance. The days that followed were tense, quiet. She'd go about her usual routines, but I could see the guilt eating her up inside. Her eyes kept flicking to her phone like she was waiting for me to catch her in something. I did my best to act normal, even as my stomach twisted into knots. Every time she'd walk past, I'd feel that surge of anger and heartbreak trying to take over. Then, that evening, I decided it was time. I wanted to see just how far she'd go, how deep her lies ran. I told her I was going out for a walk, but instead, I hid behind some trees near the cabin where I could see her come and go. I wasn't planning to ambush her, not yet. I just wanted to watch, to see what she did when she thought she was alone. She arrived at the cabin, looking over her shoulder like she was expecting someone. She slid her key into the lock, but I could see her fumbling, nervous. That's when I saw Alex's name pop up again on her screen. I snapped a quick picture on my phone just to have proof. Then I watched her slip inside, her shoulders tense. She didn't bother to hide her guilt. That look in her eyes, that frantic, guilty glance, I would never forget it. When she finally emerged an hour later, her face was flushed, her eyes darted around. She looked like a woman on the brink of panic. I stepped out from the shadows, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "Hey," I said softly. "We need to talk." Her face paled even more and she tried to brush past me, but I blocked her path. "What's going on?" I asked, voice low and controlled. Her lips trembled and she looked ready to break down. I could feel the adrenaline spike through my veins. I wasn't angry anymore, I was determined. This was the moment I'd confront her face to face, and I was done holding back. She finally looked at me, tears threatening to spill. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. That's when I knew the game was over, and I had all the evidence I needed to make my move. The look in her eyes hit me like a punch to the chest. Guilt, shame, that desperate flicker of panic, it all made my stomach turn. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, my whole life suddenly split in two. For a moment I just stared at her, trying to process everything I'd uncovered. The betrayal was right there in her face, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. "I've seen enough," I said, voice cold and even. "All those texts, the photos, the nights you've spent hiding your phone. Tell me, how long has this been going on?" My words felt heavy, like stones dropping from my mouth. She swallowed hard, eyes welling with tears, and looked down. "I don't know," she whispered, voice trembling. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far, I swear." Her knees shook and her hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. The shame pouring off her was almost unbearable. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept it locked down. I had to be smart. I wanted her to realize I wasn't the fool she'd thought I was. "Did you ever think about us, about what this would do to me, to everything we built?" I asked, voice rising just enough to make her flinch. "Or were you just too busy sneaking around and lying?" She looked up, tears streaming down her face now. "I was stupid, okay? I got caught up in the excitement and I didn't think about the consequences." Her voice cracked. "Please, I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." That's when I knew I had to take conscious control of this mess. I couldn't just walk away, not without making her understand how deeply she'd screwed up. I told her I needed time to think, but in reality I was already planning how to turn this around. The betrayal was fresh, raw, and I knew revenge had to be cold, calculated, and thorough. I told her I'd gather everything, all the evidence, and then we'd talk again. She begged me not to, but I was done listening. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore, not after seeing her desperation. I turned and walked away, leaving her crying on the porch. The cool night air hit my face, and I felt the weight of the betrayal settle deep in my chest. As I made my way back to the cabin, I thought about what I'd do next. I had the proof. I had her own words and actions. But I needed a plan that would make sure she understood I wasn't just angry, I was hurt, and I was going to make her regret ever crossing that line. The revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about making her feel the same hollow emptiness I felt right then. The night stretched out before me, dark and quiet, and I knew that by morning I'd be ready to make her pay. I already had an idea. It was cold, sharp, and precise. And once I executed it, she'd realize how badly she'd underestimated me. I couldn't wait to see her face when she found out just how deep her betrayal had cut. But more than that, I wanted her to see that I could destroy her just as easily as she'd tried to destroy us. Morning came slower than molasses. I woke up with the memory of her tear-streaked face burned into my mind. The cabin felt colder than usual, like the walls themselves were judging me. I knew I had to act fast. The evidence I'd gathered was solid. I just had to put my plan into motion without giving her a chance to escape or cover her tracks. I spent the morning cleaning up, acting like everything was normal for her sake, I suppose, but mostly for mine. Inside, my mind was racing. I had to make her believe she'd gotten away with it, but behind the scenes I was preparing my move. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. I already knew I'd take her phone, her laptop, anything that could be used to hide her lies. Around noon, I suggested we go for a walk. "Let's clear our heads," I said, voice calm but edged with that quiet fury. She hesitated, but I saw that flicker of relief when she nodded. We headed toward the woods, the scent of pine filling the air, sharp and clean. I kept my eyes on her, watching for any telltale signs of guilt, nervousness. It was like walking a tightrope. When we reached a quiet clearing, I told her I needed to talk. She looked nervous now, like she knew what was coming. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her phone, which I had secretly taken the night before. I kept my tone steady, but inside I was feeling a mix of satisfaction and cold resolve. "I want you to hear what you've been saying to Alex," I said, holding the phone out. "These are your messages, your words, and I want you to listen to yourself." I pressed play and the recording started. Her voice, pleading, anxious, regretful, it all played back. I watched her face drain of color as the words echoed in the quiet woods. She stammered, her eyes wide with shock. "That's not what it sounds like," she said, voice trembling. "You're twisting things." But her words trailed off under the weight of the truth. I saw her lips tighten, her hands clenched into fists. That moment was perfect, the moment she realized she couldn't deny it anymore. "You lied," I said, voice cold as ice. "You lied to my face, to my family, to everyone. How long has this been going on? How many nights have you spent with him hiding it?" My voice cracked with anger. "I want to know everything, no more secrets." She looked helpless, defeated. That's when I knew I had to make my move. This wasn't just about catching her. It was about showing her that I had the power now over her, over this entire mess. I told her she could stay or go, but I'd be making some changes, because she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Here, what's going to happen?" I said calmly, voice dripping with cold resolve. "You're going to pack your things and you're going to leave this cabin. I want all your stuff out before I come back, and I'm taking your phone, your laptop, everything. You want to keep lying, fine, but I'll be damned if I let you destroy what little we had." Her eyes welled with tears, but she nodded, knowing she'd lost. She didn't argue, didn't put up a fight, just looked broken, defeated. And I knew I'd won this round, but the game was far from over. I handed her the phone and she took it without a word. We didn't speak much after that. I watched her pack, her hands trembling as she hurriedly threw things into a bag. Every step she took away from that cabin felt like a small victory, but I knew revenge wasn't just about her leaving. It was about her understanding she'd been caught and I was in control now. That's the part she'd never expect. As she finally drove away, I stood on the porch, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The silence of the woods around me seemed to echo with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd taken back what was mine, and that I'd made her face her lies. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and realized this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about reclaiming my dignity piece by piece, and I vowed I wouldn't let her forget it. The hours after she left felt strange, like the world was still spinning, but I was standing completely still, trying to process everything. The cabin was eerily silent without her moving around, without her voice or her footsteps. I stood on the porch staring out at the woods, the cold air biting into my skin. For a moment I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness, like I'd just survived a storm I never saw coming. I knew I had to do something more, though. Leaving her with that knowledge, knowing I'd uncovered her betrayal, was only the start. Now I had to make sure she understood the consequences of what she'd done, in a way she'd never forget. I had the evidence, the power, and a plan to make her truly regret crossing me. First, I went inside and made a copy of all her digital mess. Every message, every photo, every email. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance, not with someone like her. I also gathered what little personal things she left behind, packing them into a box with a note. "You chose your path. Consider this your farewell." It was simple, cold, but necessary. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to chase after her or beg her to stay. Then I sat down with a cold drink and started planning my next move. The key was to make her feel the loss, to make sure she knew that her betrayal had consequences far beyond the emotional pain. I started thinking about her family, her friends, even her coworkers. I had enough dirt on her to cause some serious trouble if I wanted. Not that I was planning to ruin her life, but I wanted her to understand she'd lost more than just her marriage. It was tempting to send her a message, to let her know I was watching her every move, but I held back. Instead, I decided to let her stew, to let her feel the crushing weight of her choices. I wanted her to realize that her actions had consequences, and I'd be the one to deliver them. That night I stayed up late, making sure I had all my plans in place. The next morning I set the final stage. I went to the local cafe, ordered a coffee, and called my lawyer. I wanted to get everything in motion for a clean, decisive break. I printed out the evidence, all the messages, the photos, the emails, and put it in a folder. I knew exactly what I was going to do: serve her with divorce papers and make sure she understood the damage she'd caused. While I waited for the documents to arrive, I also made some calls. Friends, family, anyone who needed to know what kind of person she really was. I didn't want her to get away with this without consequences. I wanted her to face the truth that her betrayal had shattered everything we'd built, and I wouldn't be the one left picking up the pieces. By the afternoon, the papers arrived. I took a deep breath, stared at them, then picked up the phone. I dialed her number, but I knew I wouldn't get an answer. I was done waiting. Instead, I left a message. "You made your choice. I'm done with the lies. Expect the divorce papers in the mail. Don't try to contact me. Consider this your final warning." I hit send, then sat back to watch things unfold. Right then, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd taken control of the situation. I'd confronted her, exposed her, and now I was closing the door on that chapter of my life. It hurt, yes, but it also freed me. I knew she'd try to reach out, to manipulate or lie her way back into my good graces, but I was done. The damage was done, and I had no intention of letting her rewrite history. That night, I lay in bed and thought about everything. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my peace. She'd betrayed me, but I refused to let her win by walking all over me. I'd stand tall, even if it meant walking away from everything I once believed in. And I knew deep down that some betrayals cut so deep, they leave scars that never fully heal. But I'd make sure she remembered what she lost, and that I'd moved on without her. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog I couldn't lift. The house was still, echoing with her absence, and each morning I woke up with her betrayal weighing heavily on my chest. It was an ache that didn't go away, no matter how much I told myself I was better off without her. But beneath that pain, there was a strange sense of relief. I finally took control, finally made her see that her actions had consequences, and I'd fought back. I made sure to keep things cold and distant. I handed over the keys to the cabin and handed her the divorce papers I'd prepared. She signed without much fuss, probably eager to be rid of the mess she'd made. Watching her drive away that day, I felt a strange mixture of emptiness and liberation. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by the realization that I'd been blind for too long. The betrayal had cut deep, but now it was over. That evening, I sat alone on the porch, staring at the fading horizon, my mind finally clear. I'd done what I needed to do. The revenge was complete, not with petty insults or shouting matches, but through calm, calculated action. I'd shown her that her lies couldn't be hidden forever, and I'd taken back my power. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming my dignity after she threw it away. Over the next few weeks, I started piecing my life back together. I blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and avoided our shared circles. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't let her control my mind anymore. I focused on myself, working out, reconnecting with old friends, and rediscovering what made me happy outside of that toxic relationship. The scars of her betrayal wouldn't fade overnight, but each day got a little easier. Looking back, I realize I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile and shouldn't be taken for granted. People can surprise you in good ways and in downright cruel ones. But I also learned that sometimes The only way to heal is to confront the pain head-on and take back what's yours. You have to be willing to fight for your dignity, even if it means destroying what's broken beyond repair. So to anyone dealing with betrayal, here's what I'd say. Don't wait for the pain to pass. Take action. Collect your evidence, be strategic, and do whatever it takes to remind yourself that you deserve better. It's not about revenge for its own sake. It's about standing up for yourself, about making sure your voice is heard loud and clear. Because in the end, the only person who truly controls your happiness is you. And yes, it hurts. It'll hurt for a long time. But trust me, the moment you realize you're stronger than their lies, you start to heal. You start to rebuild. And eventually, you'll look back and see that even the darkest days can lead to a brighter future. One where you finally take back your peace, your pride, and your life.